Greetings to one and all, it's your old buddy Jay here, coming at you with another Countermeasures game changer. Now, this week I would like to talk about Resident Evil Reverse, or as they call it in Japan, Biohazard Reverse, which I actually think is a much better name and always have liked that one better. But anyway, Resident Evil Reverse is a multiplayer that is tacked on to Resident Evil Village, which comes out on May the 7th. Now, Resident Evil Village is the 8th official game in the main campaign of Resident Evil, and it has this little multiplayer included within it. And while the main game doesn't come out for a few weeks, I did just want to talk about this demo because it dropped on Thursday night, and I just felt that maybe it was worth talking about because, you know, I always like to talk about the Resident Evil franchise because I have always been a little bit of a sort of a fan of it. It has a big sort of nostalgia kind of pull for me, as I've grown up sort of playing PlayStation. It predominantly, you know, if you haven't played Resident Evil, then you haven't really played on the PlayStation, I guess, because it's such a core game that helped to launch that way back in the day. Now, Resident Evil Reverse is a third-person, over-the-shoulder multiplayer action game, and it uses all of the characters throughout the franchise as the skins for the people you're playing as. And the idea is that you are pitted against other people other real people, I should say, online in various maps that are taken from the Resident Evil franchise. Now, straight away, I would just like to say that this is not very good. I have put in probably about 3 hours into the demo, and it's not a very good game in my opinion. And the reason being is that Resident Evil, for me, the core of what makes that so successful is that it's a very slow-paced, methodical work through a kind of horror environment where you're very limited on ammo, you're very limited on resources such as your health and health sprays and green herbs and all that kind of stuff. So when you find those within the game, it's real momentous moments because you know it's going to push you through to the next section. And the enemies that you're fighting are very formidable, which means that some sections are really difficult, which is very rewarding when you do get through those. So what they've just basically done here is they've taken all of the key elements of the look and feel of those characters that people know so well, and they've just dropped them into this kind of very mundane and slightly repetitive map. Now, the demo only has one map. It's the Raccoon City Police Department / museum. I never did work out why the police department was a museum. Don't think anyone ever asked that question, but that's the map that you get in the demo. And it's very repetitive, and obviously it's all very brightly lit so that you can see your enemies when you're running around the map trying to take them out, which isn't something that lends itself to the kind of tone of voice of this game because, when the remake came out of Resident Evil 2, it was all very dark and dingy and very the moods were set by the lighting in that game, and straight away that's completely thrown out of the window, and they've just given you the most generic version of that map. Now, as you can see here, you do get to play as 6 different main characters. So you've got Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Leon Kennedy, Claire Redfield, Ada Wong, and Hunk, who's the sort of the police dude with the helmet on. And then you get to choose a bioweapon. Now, what happens is you spawn in, you run around, shoot some people, eventually you get taken out, and when you get taken out, you turn into a biomutant that can then attack other people, and depending on how much other gunk you've picked up, these little purple vials of Resident Evil juice, it depends on what you turn into as your biomutant. And it's fine, I guess. I mean, I don't understand why you would want to turn this into a multiplayer. I know a few years ago they did try and do something extremely similar to this, which was called the Umbrella Corps, I think. And yes, if I remember correctly, it was just a multiplayer where you were playing as like this guy Hunk. you were playing as a load of these guys picking up various vials and chemicals and viruses, etc. And yeah, it just didn't do very well. It sort of failed on a massive level, and people just didn't get invested in it. So they've obviously looked at that again. They're desperate, to the Resident Evil franchise, aka Capcom, are desperate to get a multiplayer out of this franchise. I just don't understand why. Like, the greatest thing about this is that it has really good lore behind it. I mean, some of the characters aren't very well written; they're a bit cheesy, but that's part of the charm and part of the nostalgia. And I think as soon as you drop it into just like a generic shooter like this, it just loses any kind of gravitas and any weight that it might have had, however little that was it might have had. So I'm not really a big fan of this game. I don't really see why it exists. I didn't like Umbrella Corps. I haven't liked any of the attempts by Capcom to turn this into some kind of online multiplayer, other than all I can think of is that they really want to sort of cash in with these characters on a similar level to games like Fortnite, etc., where eventually this game's sort of free, been tacked onto Resident Evil 8, so you can't complain there. But I see a future where maybe it's been monetized, where maybe there are another load of skins that of people that you want to play as, or different versions of those that you then would end up buying, which is all I can see. It's like a little testing ground, if you ask me. And if this is successful, then why not bring out Resident Evil 9 with another version of this, but that's like a separate game or a paid DLC or something like that. So that's all I can think of why this will exist, why they've put the time into it. And when you're playing it, you realize actually they haven't put that much time into it. Creatively, I think from an art direction point of view, it's not very strong. They've just stripped out the skins from whatever systems they've had set up for previous games, aka the remake of Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3. And they've just bodged them into this map, which now is just like a generic room, basically, because, now, like I said, now all the lighting's gone, all the mood's gone. Why would you ever want to play this anymore? It just doesn't really make any sense. Doesn't have the same keeping of what makes this franchise successful, and I think you could argue that maybe it's a bit of fun as an arcade shooter, and in the time I played it, for the first 10 minutes it was okay, and then for the remaining kind of 2.5-3 hours it was just repetitive boredom. I just didn't really enjoy it at all, really. I would not recommend that you play this, even though it is free. If you get the Resident Evil 8 game, and this was on PS5, I do think that that game looks incredible, the main core game. But this, I just don't understand why it exists and why they keep trying to get into this space. It's clearly not for them. They need to think of doing something a bit more creative and innovative. You can't just take something that's worked, for the last sort of 20 odd years that people are starting to get a little bit bored of, and just reskin it, basically. Do something like Fortnite, took the battle royale genre and then took this whole sort of idea of kind of bright colors and interesting characters and did something really creative with it, which is why that's been such a huge success. This is just taking a load of old crap that they've got already and just chucking it into a little grinder and spitting out whatever this is. And I just don't really think it's successful in that way. It's boring to play. The gun play isn't very good in this game. It never has really been that good in Resident Evil. The character movement, it isn't very good in Resident Evil anyway. Look, as you can see, like where she's running here, it seems like the character model seems to have been speeded up to make it look like there's a little bit more pace. She's moving really fast, but she's actually not moving that fast in the map. So there's an idea here that it's trying to add a little bit of speed to it that Resident Evil doesn't traditionally have. It's much more slow paced and a little bit more clunky, which again is part of the charm. And unfortunately, I think in this case, it loses anything that is quality about it by just making it about as generic as you can get, really. So I wouldn't recommend that you try this. It's just not really worth your time. I would recommend that you get Resident Evil 8 though, because that does look really, really good. The Village one, that does look really good. I'm looking forward to reviewing that next month. And yeah, I think if I had to score this, I would give it a 2 out of 10 because yeah, it's you know, there's a little bit of nostalgia throwback to the characters here. Yeah, I just don't really like the, you know, I don't really know what's happened to the art style of this because it looks like the characters have been cell shaded a little bit, and I don't really understand why you would want to do that. But it must just be something to do with the motion, the way they're interacting with the environment means that they need to have this kind of weird black line running around them. But you know, it could also just be my monitor, I guess. Anyway, that's all I've got to say about this. So yeah, avoid if you can, and play anything else. There you go. There's my recommendation. So until next time, be good, stay safe, and be kind to one another.